Starcrackers totally approve of that. Although Mark's Cards doesn't yet know, I'll tell him in a couple days, Thursday. But there are now printouts of season 1 of Starcrackers. The season 1 book was all in one place, as well as 2 and 3 in one place. So we put them in there, set them up, and put them on the official. Took them out of the archive and made copies of them and put them in the official, like we did with the other ones. So this is a behind-the-scenes making of those stories. Starcrackers hinted at that earlier on, saying that when we did Starcrackers and Distant Cousins, we did them at the same time. Doing them at the same time again, 30 years later. So, 30 years later. So they'll be in the same studio at the same time. The Starcrackers, even though it appears that there are 9 hours of television in there, that's season 1. But it's actually 15 episodes, something like that, 14, 15 episodes. But they're very short. They're like half-hour episodes. Stick them together. Maybe rename them as you will. Or just use them as you will. They're very generic titles, so I liked them, so I kept them. I've been hinting at that for years, saying like, oh, the Red Angel is actually a building at San Jose State from 1994. It is. It's still there. It's the art building. They stole it from Star Trek. It's a lot like Lower Decks. I was going through the stories. It's a lot like a silly version of Star Trek. More so than Destiny's, which is now Canary Space. This is going to be Vanguard Space. Because Space Vanguards is weird. A little weirder, and Starcrackers really can't be used because there's too many of those. So it's Vanguard Space. And over the years they joked on the premise of the Space Cop. I thought maybe Red Letter Media made this movie called Space Cop about 10 years ago, And we joked that, Space Cop would totally be in the Starcrackers universe. He totally would. He would exist in the Starcrackers. He'd be one of the guys in it. He'd be lying around, because that's kind of, we were on the same wavelength. Not saying they took the idea; they clearly didn't, but yeah, they're on the same wavelength. So, also, they've kind of shared ideas during Starship locations, so that they could appear in a couple episodes as aliens in that. So they're around. One of them's a lore figure, one of them's a Neelix figure, and then there's a third one that's a Riker figure. So the third one was complaining at one point during one of the Star Trek things, mentioning the fan films but not by name. The Red Letter Media guys are saying, Rich and Mike is a lore, and I'm a Neelix, of course, because Neelix is my favorite character ever. This fan film thing. It clearly wasn't, but that's the joke. Then Jay Bowden chimed in and going, why am I not in this guy's fan film? Maybe it's just a good thing I'm not. But then he was added to the Legacy series. He was in Legacy. So he's in there. Or was he in Legacy, or was he in the one before, Destinations? Yeah. They added him to that one. The other two weren't there as much. And then we did the two Star Trek scripts that season. We did that. We did the DS9 one and the other one. We did we did the DS9 one and the Voyager one. They're spec scripts that when you could submit. You can't do that anymore. But back in the 90s, they had a writing contest you could submit, and we followed all the rules and submitted. And we're ultimately rejected, but we submitted. And to DS9 and the new show that was Voyager at the time. And this series over here has one of those episodes, but it actually has a pre-episode. It has differesences. The precursor, the Next Generation script that became the Voyager episode later on, was rewritten as it. And then later on they they rewrote it again as Judgment. So this was the series where it was used again. It was used in that one. So you get to see the earlier version and then the other version. It's very woke, critical race theory. I hate to break it to the people that are freaking out about woke, but Star Trek has always been that way. Always been that. Yeah, it's always been about that. Diversity. It's in the name. Infinite diversity and infinite combinations. Joe Trimble and D.C. Fontana and Gene Kuhn. Marketing something. The IDIC symbol so it can sell it to people as a trinket. Nimoy, of course. back in the day, the late Nimoy. All those people are the late something. But yeah, Star Crackers is another homage to Star Trek, the sillier version. We put our teacher from Pine Hill in it. We put Steve Clark in it. We and interestingly enough, this teacher from years ago, I really liked him and put him in the story, and Mark's Cards playing him, John Yeager, of course, and he played him he was when we started filming on the movie version when he was 18, so I was 21. We didn't know what we were doing at all. We did not know what we were doing, and it took a dozen years to finish that. The actual finished script is right there. It's about 70 minutes. It's not even a full movie. Pilot. It's not even a full movie if you put it all together. So it's short. It's a pilot. It doesn't matter what the length of the individual episodes are, but they seem to be about 22 minutes. So they'd be like half-hour episodes of like Lower Decks. Let's stick the 22-minute episodes together and form a nice 45-minute episode out of each of them. That'd be good. An hour. Just so you can get through the 9 episodes that are there. A couple of them are two-parters. One was the Kiwi Fiasco, which was a rewrite of a story from later on in the series. The series went on after the show was canceled. So Star Crackers had a full first season, and then full for its time, first season and second season. Before, interestingly enough, it kind of pioneered stuff without even knowing it. The typical first season of Star Crackers and Distant Cousins back in the 90s, 10 episodes long. Most Netflix shows, most Star Trek shows, 8 to 10 episodes long these days. They don't go to 20 episodes, they do 10. I don't know how we predicted that, but we kind of did. I'm not saying that we ended up getting any credit, but we didn't. But yeah, it's a shorter episode series run. That's because they speed run them together now. Nowadays they string out an average season. They just film the whole season like one after the other, and then they can do 10 episodes only and just go from there. Reality TV started in the late 80s, so but no, it was not popular until the early 90s. So you have Star Crackers was Cal Cat and March Cards, Brown and Yeager, and Steve Clark. We actually suspected all along that he was LGBTQ friendly, and didn't, so we made his character like that, kind of a Metro character. Turns out he actually was. We didn't know that. And on MySpace and Facebook later on, the teacher guy was like, "Oh yeah, I totally am that." So even he was married to a lady, and then he got divorced, and then he married a guy, and I guess they're happy together. That's awesome. But yes, the teacher guy. But yeah, we based the character on him, and although I have a similar hairline to him, he didn't have much hair up here. but Mark's Cards has plenty of hair, so it's kind of weird. So he's like Picard in the story. So he's Sam Clark. He's the origins of Sam Clark. Sam Clark Picard. Lelantos is kind of the same guy, mixed in with a Mako, Mark's Cards character. And you might say, "Oh, you stole the Makos from the..." No, he was thinking of Mako car stuff before the Makos on Enterprise, long before the Makos on Enterprise, in the 80s. Mako, it's just Mako, it sounded cool. Mako. And he was thinking of the car people, probably. Not the Makos, the command ops guys on Enterprise. And how do you know we didn't give them the Enterprise people that idea? We totally could have, after our script. Gave them the idea. Yeah, so they knew. They knew what he was named after. And he's also named after a kind of shark. So were they. So yeah, who do you think gave him the idea? Yes. But we do not discuss A Night in Sick Bay. Anyway. But anyway, so there's Star Crackers. I noticed his name in the script has been changed to Devin Clark to avoid the confusion of it literally being his name. Or he's Sam Clark in the story, I would imagine. And we're not going to change any names, I don't think, any further. The names that were changed for the novel version came out in 2019, which is what this was. The novel versions of it, which were just the printed up episodes as collections. They didn't even, wasn't even much editing at all. Which isn't good, but it isn't bad either. But yeah, they made them into little novels, and this is about 513 pages, so it's about 9 hours of television. That's a season basically. And it was the storybooks went on after the pilot. Even though the pilot movie was written, the storybooks went on, and we were publishing like crazy in the 90s for the 90s version. And late in '94, we stopped making them for like 6 months, and then made some novel books every now and then. Every 6 months or so, 8 months or so, we make novel books. So that's kind of after Send Off. That went on for a couple of years until it went off and on for like almost 10 years, and then Starcrackers Prospectors, 2000, in the 2000s. But that would be book 3. And it was originally set in 2311, but they've rejiggered the timeline so that this is the 2490s. So this is up with 1990. So it's between Distant Destiny Season 1 and 2. Strangely enough. I guess we were going to do a crossover once, and I found the remains of that, and we don't want to use that. That was a crossover. Where the ship was called the Josh Braun in the original. And it was gonna meet the Endeavor. They're going to hang out. Don't do that. Yeah, don't film that one. Just don't. Yeah. And then a bunch of time travel stuff happened in season 2. All of them was later rejected. 97. There was storybooks were a mess and they got canceled. So this is the good season. This is season 1. Stop. That's all you need. If you want to do seasons 2 exists. It does, as the short novels, hour-long novels stuck in there. You could do those. There's another 500 pages of those, just about. There's Prospectors, which has another 400 and something pages of them. Don't do Paradise Station. It's not in there because it wasn't part of the canon. It was later rejected. It was a 3rd series that didn't get produced. There was a spin-off called Rebels that didn't end up getting produced. Some of that became this, went back, fed into this, and then the 2019 rewrite, Kiwi Fiasco, for instance. You didn't need to, the crossovers didn't need to, time travel with the earlier stuff, no. And then time travel with other ships, and you didn't need the time travel. John March Cards is a showstopper, you need the time travel. Another thing they used in it, but didn't really visit them much, was the Terrellians. The Terrellians, you might recognize that name from Star Trek. March Cards, John. At Pine Hill had come up with the name Terrellians for these lizard things with 4 arms at Pine Hill in like 86. They're called the Terrellians. The Next Generation introduces human plague guys called the Terrellians. The season later, these other guys called Terrellians. Season later, 4-armed lady called a Terrellian, playing the piano. Season 7, Terrellians again, describing them as lizards. Clearly Next Generation was somehow coming up with that name, I guess. It just sounded alien and cool, Terrellians. And then Talarians and whatever, in one of the movies. So the Tamarellians is a name that's been changed repeatedly in there over and over again. So that's still in there. I don't think any of them appear, though. I think there's like cameo. But if they did, they'd be the Lithians from Starship Locations, which we introduced at the end of the season. So you'll know about those. And also, they're the Lithians. They're Lithians. Case of Conscience. James Flesh. Same thing. Or cousins of them. The Gorn are too. The Gorn are not aliens from Alien. The Strange New Worlds is doing it wrong. They do not breed by parasitic infection. That's stupid. That should be regular bloodworms. Even according to David Gerald, that should be regular bloodworms. They're infected with bloodworms. That's what's doing it. They're not. Yeah, it's not hatching baby Terrellians. It's just bloodworms. Anyway, so yeah, they did that right. They really didn't do that right on Strange New World. So other names and appearances, Henderson, Thompson. When there is video of the cast of Starfighter. Their video, you're never going to see it. November Remember was the name of the video. followed by the Deadly Hour, the other meeting, the cast of the Minions, our little high school gang, meeting up to do our gang of nerd geeks. We weren't a gang. Meeting up to discuss being in this fan film movie that we're going to make. And had written, it was going to be Graham Cracker Chronicle back then, but we were going to rewrite it as this other thing. Wrath of Khan's spoof, whereas instead of it being that they're enemies, they were former friends, and they have to they're trapped inside a device that's trapped them, and they need to escape. So they need to team together to escape. Very infinite diversity Star Trek kind of thing. Very enemy mine kind of thing. I'm sure he's thinking enemy mine. Yeah, which is fine. That's fine. It's an 80s movie. More so than Khan. He was, and later on in the late 80s, Cube with Nicole DeBauer was also kind of the same idea. With future Ezra Dax in it. I'm thinking of that too. So you have, yeah, that's pretty similar. So you have, and also Picard season 3, if you think about it, with the Nebula. Yeah, they've been cribbing more stuff for years. And the Red Angel appeared on Star Trek Discovery season 2, quite a lot. Except the Red Angel was literally a time-space suit creature. It was either the mother or Burnham. And they got it wrong because it's a building at San Jose State, and it's a solar system. It's not a person. It's a red solar system. It's a red dwarf. There are lots of those around here. Some of the star names don't match up anymore, which is funny because they've had better equipment since the 90s, and they scanned those areas and said, that's not really what that is. Yeah, so in a lot of cases, that's not what that is. You think we could see planets around Centaurus from here. But and other names will stay, like that of Sarah Giannoli. She will say Sarah Giannoli because she is the consultant on this was, oddly enough, Martha, who was one of the set designer people, or one of the character writers, sister. And in the 90s when we did the movie, and she didn't want to be Kimchi, but she was supposed to be. She was supposed to be the psychologist. Kimchi's a counselor. He became a counselor, but a different kind, a drug and alcohol counselor. And then doesn't do that anymore. Stopped doing that in the late 2010s, before the pandemic. She stopped doing that. Late 2010s. So there's Space Marines on a ship, and I was saying that the character of Sarah is actually this is before the birth of Sarah the niece. One of the Sarah of the niece, one of the cast members who's now in Missouri. Martha's also in Missouri, and we want to keep that because that character is named after. She is named after the character from Starcrackers, who is sort of a Karen in the story. But they would call it a Karen later on, but she's clearly a Karen. She's the captain's girlfriend. She's the captain's woman, basically, in the story. Sarah Giannoli. And Clark's woman. And Clark's not interested, really. It turns out that he's interested in techite women or men or whatever. He's metro, which is funny. And we got Schmidt, the Marine guy, who was based on Schmidt from Jung Swan, and Tim Cantrell, of course. And Henderson, who was based on Jamie Mezzi from Pine Hill. And Mark Skars is playing him in the story, in the movie. And Jim Buffkin, Jim Chacon, the aggressive older character that was among us, that was maturity-wise not so much older, but he didn't want to play opposite Henderson in a scene, so he didn't want to play that. He wanted to be anybody else that wasn't that. So he's all, I want my scenes only on the ship where there's that. Not all the asshole guy. But in the script, in the first script, there weren't that many scenes with Henderson and Thompson. Later episodes, there were. So, yeah, you want to do that. Even though I was going to play the other Thompson guy, if he didn't. So Martin Roadkill becomes the Thompson guy. But yeah, so you get to see the early genesis of some of those Transtech people. Yeah, because Martin Roadkill is not Raxler. Morton Roadkill's, if I'd said Morton Roadkill was Raxler, it kind of is, kind of isn't. No, it's like Cowpoke. It's obviously that. Oh yeah. So yeah, that's who that is. Well yeah, it's cowpoke. Sometimes it's Billy Allen. So yes. He was the other guy. He was the doctor, Dr. Lancaster. Rick Moore was changed to Richie Morar in this. She becomes a lady, maybe a foot lady. She's got a wiener. I don't know. Maybe. It's only suggestive in the stories. It's a little. It's not any more raunchy than that Picard the Forge episode we did. It's not any worse than that. Yeah. So that's funny. There is a kind of messed up line where one of the bad guys says he's going to bugger the heroes, but that's kind of funny though. Maybe they're going to like it. Threatens to bugger. That's kind of messed up. Rapey of him, but okay. But he doesn't. He just says he's going to. There were weird non-controversies early on because it was the 90s, right after the Gulf War thing. So when Sadre Raxler is introduced, he's got a bathrobe and he didn't have a bathrobe on, but that was a problem. He washed his hair. He come out of the shower because we were like, it literally had happened. Took a shower in the basement, and I just didn't think to take it off. And of course, we went with that towel on the head thing as a joke, and we're not thinking of people from Arabia or anything like that. But of course, Jim Jacon chimes up. He's operating the camera. Goes, oh, he's like an Iraqi. No, we didn't even realize that. Oh my gosh, no, he kept out of the shower. He's just in the. No, that's not what we're talking about. He wasn't an Iraqi. Not at all. No, he's Russian, if anything. He's like a czarist Russian guy. Probably think of that picture of Khan as well from something Indian. He would be but he's not though. He's European and something else. Yeah, he's Clint Capo. But he's Raxler of the 3rd Zuri Garrison. I have a white cloth wrapped around my head. Because I stepped out of the shower. Actually, in the book version, he comes out naked. They have to put a towel on him, which is funny. We're not going to film that. No, these are action figures. They're going to be little action Star Trek action figures. Yeah, there's nobody naked. But not in the movie. In the movie, he was wearing a towel. I didn't think to put a bathrobe on him. I didn't think to do that. Probably, yeah. Oh well. That scene didn't work anyway. It's a visual gag. It doesn't work. They were pointing out about bad jokes on another channel unrelated to that. Was somebody trying to make a non-joke about assassinations and stuff? It's not a joke if you have to explain your joke afterward. In Starcrackers, they don't explain. It just happens. Case in point, the Clark character deciding to inadvertently wear his girlfriend's panties, but then to go into the bridge as a sort of a silly space cop guy, and then announce to the bridge crew, and due to an early warning error, I'm wearing my girlfriend's underwear. That's all he needs to say, and the crew doesn't say anything about it. They're just like, oh. It's a little different. Yep. So yeah, error. Oh yes, but no. So you have goofy characters acting like a teen sex comedy, basically in space, which goofy space cops would totally do. They would totally do that. Yeah, they're space cops. They're space. They're even less than space. They're space like security guards, because Tim was going to be a security guard. He's studying to be a security guard. So they're space security guards. If Jim Buffin didn't write very much of this, but he's definitely involved in it, in the story. He's in there. Tim's in there, definitely. There's anything with that character with Schmidt and Moore. And in Moore, there was a scene where Moore was supposed to fly out of the in the movie. It's in the movie, with the live-action Starcrackers movie. He flies out of supposed to fly out of the warp chamber because he had to fix the engine inverter pulsator engine thing is what he called it. Inverter pulsator engine thing. Sounds impressive. We know what we're doing. and he couldn't. So he flew out of it past the other characters. We didn't film it right, so it looked like he fell onto the cameraman. That wasn't what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to like move the. You should have moved the camera over from the ground and shot him falling out of the closet. That probably would have looked better. But instead, he goes whoa, like this into frame. It's like, what? What's going on? It's like, no, this doesn't look right. Doesn't look right at all. Later on, there was a scene in which involving him in underwear, in which he couldn't say the line. The line was too funny; he could not say it. Even we tried to do a redub of it in 2005. He still couldn't say it. 12 years later, 2005. He was like, oh, I used the tetanite to find the boiling point of my underwear. He just couldn't say it loud enough. I'm too embarrassed to say this line. I can't do it. Whoa. But you didn't really. That's really funny, actually. He's still on the screen. Ah! Henderson, of course, plays the incel of space, even though he does eventually get a girlfriend. Get Sarah briefly his girlfriend in the story. I guess the crazy girl, basically. Yeah, so there's like, yeah, he's the irony is that of the cast from Pine Hill, the group, the annoying A-type personality guy that made up a bunch of stories. That one, he ends up getting getting wives and getting married, and going and having lots of children with crazy ladies. So it's kind of like you predicted that. In that story, there's like, oh, wives and ex-wives. He's got lots of ex-wives now. The infamous Jake. I don't think Jim's married. No. I don't think, Mark Scars and I are not married. No, to anybody. So that didn't happen. So yeah, there's that. Tim's married. He has a kid. Yeah. Figured Tim would get married. One time there was a discussion among the group of Pine Hill people that are most likely to go or stay or whatever, or do things similar when they were adults to other stuff. And it was like, okay, you have all the archetypes of what we were. You got the space geeks as a space geek nerd. Me and Mark's cards he was the youngest, and you got Angie, who was the stoner, and Tim, who was the big, tall, gruff guy, but not a teddy bear. You had Jim took on the hostile and a crazy kind of guy, but was generally kind-hearted, even though he was great. And then you had which may be the weird one, but he wasn't involved in that story. And they were saying like, okay, well, where would in terms of where would they end up? What would they end up doing in the future for this? 1991 when this story was. Couldn't guess, it was like Tim will probably have kids. Yeah, he'll be like a coach or something. It kind of didn't happen. He became a security guard. And maybe Adam and John would live together, and they'll have wives and kids and stuff, and they'll have other stuff. But Mark's cards, he won't go back to Pine Hill, but Adam will go back to Pine Hill. He'll be at Pine Hill. Like doing Pine Hill like a teacher or something, a coach or something. Angie won't do that. She'll go off to the ends of the earth and won't do that. Yeah, she'll be something else. Pretty much what happened. We didn't end up living together, but didn't have kids. But yeah, ended up being a Sunday school helper person in ESL. Yeah, stuff. Not quite Pine Hill, but yeah. Yeah, weekend church going person. Yeah, and it was one was an instructor, a black belt for a while, so 2000s. So yeah, those two things kind of happened, in a sense. Some of them didn't. I have no idea what happened to Jim Buffett, but the story's an homage. It's like the 2-part kind of thing. Yeah, it doesn't matter what the range is, 50 minutes or more. Usually what we do, Starship Location Zones has been cribbing from stuff like this for years. So it's like, it's kind of like that episode of StarCraft. You might see somebody and go, wait a minute, some of those lines were in Starship Destinations and Legacy and stuff. Yeah, they were. I can see where they got it from. I'm not sure if you need to go over to and print those other Distant Destiny ones yet. Let's just worry about season 1 of either or, and not go on to the other ones just yet. Because you jump ahead in the Distant Destiny universe. Jumps ahead to book 2, and that one is 10 years after book 1, and season 2 is 10 years after season 1, and season 3 is 10 years after that. So probably, yeah, that would be awkward, just and generational and confusing. Or if you just don't say that it's 10 years. Yeah, you could do that, I guess. A little awkward. No, I kind of have to say. Yeah, so there's no need. Yeah, so Starcraft. Yeah, there's a lot of goofy stuff in there. At least it didn't have a planet of the planet to Mongolian planet. They didn't have that. Didn't know what. Yeah, By then, by college, I certainly realized that not to do that. Yeah. So. Yeah. So there's other. Yeah. It's. And I write stories, sci-fi stories and stuff, hobby kind of thing. So, yeah. I guess we'll do Starcracker. As long as Mark's Cards is really averse to it and doesn't want it to. He said of the Sphere story and the Termarian story and all that years ago that he'd been trying to rewrite that idea as a full-length novel. This was going back to, like, he wanted to rewrite the Starcracker story as a serious sci-fi novel with this alien race and stuff, and as an epic, and it would have been long and hardly any dialogue. It would have been just long, and he'd always been kicking that around until for years, and we discussed it and what would happen in it and everything, and tried to get it out of him for years and years, and finally, like that, in 2015 or so, when we were putting up the books, preparing the books to go out in later on 2019, when they finally finished them, they were to the 2019 period. We were actually considered after a good. He thought of that original story in like 1990. So by 2019, that's like 30 years. 2019, yeah, that's 30 years later. Yeah, almost 30 years later. 2020, almost 30 years later. Still hadn't done it. Hadn't written this super novel. Meanwhile, the Cat Show continues to make fan films and stories and film them and do epic, long-winded things and go out there. Well, he does work. He does complete work. Yeah, he's not anything like the Pine Hill people. We thought he was going to be some sort of coach. No, he's ended up being a computer technician, contractor, going around doing computer stuff. It's completely not what we thought he would have done back in the day. Yeah, that's right. He's not. He's busy all the time. But when he wasn't busy all the time, in the 90s, in the early 2000s, he could have wrote this story. I certainly could have, as you can see from my prolific thousands of pages, 500 pages for a season in the 1990s, from 1992 to 94. 100-page novel. It's a novel. Yeah, this is one of them. Distant Destinies was 7 parts, about 400 pages each. That one, the Canary Saga, the whole thing. That's immense. I can churn it out. All you gotta do is come up with the idea. So he's ADHD a little bit. So when he writes a story, he tends to go over the same information again. The original treatment for Sphere of Influence was a 45-page typed thing. It was a typed 45-page thing, and I turned it into a 70-page novel. Script. It was a script. Not a very good one. That wasn't a very good script. But the second half of it, How they Escape, he never wrote that. I did. I had to figure out from the Escape. It took forever to get it out of that. It took 2 years to get him out, get that. How is this going to end? How are they going to get out of the Sphere thing? We were quite happy with it all the way up until 2011. We were going to put it up online. And we're all like, okay, we have to come up with how they get out and all that. They can't just be randomly How do they do that? How does the other Raxler have them escape? I know you filmed some footage in 2005 where you kind of fudged it and said, okay, he does this and that, and had a little speech. But we had to dub over like audio of how your little audio tracks saying lines in there because they weren't filmed. That movie was kind of a mess because really didn't. We finished it, but we really didn't. Well, that script finishes it, and then it goes on from there. But yeah, the Termelian thing and the epic of the space aliens. To his credit, though, eventually in 2003, he did release a chapter of this thing that he had started in 1993. A chapter. It's called Twilight on the Sea of Bones. He wrote a chapter of it and had the opening scene with the guy, the scientist on the planet, with the Termelian doctor. They were sweet on each other, and they're out on the planet, and of course everybody that read it thought Twilight, thought Bella and the vampire in Twilight. Yeah, no, it's Twilight on the Sea of Bones. I think I have it back there. I printed it up from the printout. Yeah, we kept it. But yes, actually, it's the original. I think it's the original with the Gary Cito cover. It's the original. It was saved. The Twilight on the Sea of Bones, and in the other universe, it apparently became a romance series that they were all familiar with on the ship in the Legacy. Oh yeah, we know about that. We do that all the time. Yeah. But yeah, he tends to have big ideas, but not finish them. I finish them. I do a big thing and go out there and finish them. Yeah. If he has ADHD, finish this up. No, you have to come to a conclusion. The sentence has to end to find out what's going next. See, he'll see the bigger picture of the plot, and I'll see all the little details, pulling out the details and saying, okay, this is where you need to go from there. If you want to go from there, you go there. The black hole thing changed. What we knew about black holes changed. All that stuff. What he was describing more or less was a wormhole or a gate, not a black hole. It's completely different than what he was describing. And then Star Trek 2009 made it worse by having it be a wormhole or a gate again, but also destroys planets. And it's like, they even there they screwed it up. But that was more of an anomaly maker thing. Yeah. They called it a black hole, but it was an artificial singularity. The Termelians. He's probably also thinking of V, the visitors, a little bit, and the Skeksis from Land of the Lost, and their aliens and the various aliens from Ancient Aliens again. But in this one, it embraces it. It says, yeah, sure. In this one, there are no aliens, and the weird oddities of Starcrackers is that it's a timeline where at some point 10,000 years earlier, most of the alien races that were advanced were wiped out by some sort of what we call now the Dark Forest, or what we call now malevolent alien race that wanted to wipe them out. So there was a great war in space that wiped them out, and in that universe. So there were only a few were left, the humans and the lizard people and the dog people and some of the other ones. They were left, and the Techites and the Techites, yes. Yes, Techite. He actually thought, he was not thinking of the Dungeons & Dragons character. I think he thought Techite, as in a tech. There's a joke in there. He was just thinking technology-ite. They had technologies that they were called the Techites. He was not thinking of that character, although it is clearly, Azeroth is clearly not only a Techite, but a Dungeons & Dragons character, as well as others. Similar, as common as orc and elf and goblin. But he's a dog. A dog creature thing. Half dog, half man creature. Probably also thinking of Spaceballs, the monk. Absolutely. Because, it makes sense, though, in the story. Of course, the dog princess was a joke on a Silly Trek episode that crossed over with the Kirk one, where Captain Kirk will screw anything, right? So it goes down to this planet, and the joke is that he he mates with a alien dog princess. And that's the joke. It's not a lot funny, but it's funny that it's a dog. That's what's funny. It probably would be a horse, but not a dog. Well, yes. But yes. More people should be complaining about the original Starcrackers. There weren't any girls because they didn't want to be in our stuff. They were like the flyer people, evergreen flyer paper people, thought that we were making a porno, so they didn't want to be in it. There's a number of people that thought that. I said, we're not making a porno. How would we know what to do that? It's not a porno. It isn't. But I read that script and it mentioned underwear. Yeah, but it's a joke. He didn't actually do it. He's just talking about it. Yeah, it's not a joke if you actually did it. It would just be disturbing. Yeah, Raxler didn't actually come in naked. Yeah, I was like, ew. Yeah, they're eating food all the time. There was also a blooper gag where, Raxler. Well, there's gags in the movie version where Raxler's constantly eating food because his digestive system is messed up. He's constantly eating them, and because just to give me something to do so I wouldn't flub my lines, and basically. So yeah, there's characters in there. Anderson, Thompson. Did I miss anybody? Carrie Urgent. Yeah, originally named after the actor, Carrie. And just because the roommates happen to have the same name, I can't do that. So it is changed in there to Curigen. But it's not supposed to be the same people at all. They weren't around back then. They weren't out here back then. Not until the late 90s. That's when the name was changed to Curigen, anyway. So yeah, those are not connected. Not even supposed to be. It's just Silly Kelly on the ship, the helmsman. Oddly enough, in some of the early versions of the story that you'll never see, he's wearing Jung Swan promotional shirts. It says Ebenezer Power shirt, and another one we changed that using footage from Graham Cracker Chronicle the Board. It didn't look right, but that's what we did. Yeah, it really didn't look right. But that's all we had to finish the story 13 years later. And now, the pilot and the story is greenlit. We have greenlit the first season of Starcrackers 30 years later. Basically said, yeah, we're going to do it. Oh, okay. There's no Starcrackers. There's no real rush on the Space Vanguard Season 2, but there's the printouts of them. Just waste the last of that other paper ream there. Turns out we had enough, so went for it. I don't think you should print Season 3 yet. They keep saying that. Yeah. There's always the option of buying another thing of ink. There's about $40 for a black ink cartridge. You have you don't have to. You don't have to do all that right now. It's just that there was the paper left, it turns out, so we finished off the last of it, and there's a new box. So. Space Vanguards, Starcrackers, Season 2, which was a series of novelettes and short stories in continuing seasons after the show was canceled in '94. The other stories lasted until 1999, so they rounded up with that 1999. They ended with that. And then Season 3 was in 2005 and said to be 10 years later. But in the rewrite of the books for 2019, we moved it back because Mark Scards was adamant that it did not be a generational story with their children serving on the ship. That's just weird. Distant cousins can get away with that, having a jump 10 years in the future. But not Starcrackers. Let's have it integrate the story into the 10 years that was all together in the story from 2491 to the turn of the century, 2501. And so do that, and that's what your series is. And that was changed. Mentioning earlier he's a consultant on it and co-writer about 20% of it, of less than 20% of it. And with Prospectors, the third season, hardly at all, except that he inspired some of the characters and some of the furry characters that are in it, and their personalities. But other than that, didn't have much to do with it. There was a spin-off after that called Paradise, which no one's ever going to see, which was a Deep Space Nine finale parody that only people watching Deep Space Nine would even care about. Done way better later on in Starship Locations. Way better. Also, we've probably adapted that story of the, those two episodes, those two Star Trek stories we wrote, at least 3 times in the Starcracker series. The Judgments as another version of it, done in the version of the Voyager one, the Arbiter, which was done in Prospectors as well. So yeah, so a lot of Prospectors is already Starship Locations. You don't really need to do it again. You don't need to do season 3 at all, really at all. If you want to, but it would be repetitive. It's a new crew, a new ship, different thing. It's the end. Clark, the third season, Clark's not around. It's mainly Schmidt who shows up near the end. They rewrote it so that he could appear near the last couple episodes before that show was canceled. And we canceled it because it was our own show. Not really a show though. I kept saying show when it was stories. Never made it to a show. It's remarkable that now 30 years later it's going to be a show. It took 30 years. They should have asked for us to do it when we're in our prime. Yeah, the Hollywood stuff should have been like, oh, okay, well, they're in their prime. Let's hire them on in the 1990s and have them do, like a space show. That'd be cool. Now it's action figures and middle-aged. But I guess that's as long as it takes for some of them to realize the awesome potential of Captain Cards. Realize, oh yeah, they actually have some good stuff. We should probably watch their stuff. It's good. But yeah, this is not the virtue of being a story series that these two, Canary Space and Space Vanguard Space, not Space Vanguard Space. For copyright reasons, they switched the name there. So when we confused for Starship Vanguard, and when we confused for other things that were Vanguard, it's not that. It's not that at all. It's just that's the name. Because one of the contributors, Tim Cantrell, Big Tim from high school, security guard. So for years, so we wanted them the Vanguard. Originally, I didn't address this, but originally, the ship was called the Josh Braun. The ship was named after a kid from Pine Hill that died in January of '88. And was not Chuckley, but he died in a car accident. And then we named the ship after him. When we did Starcrackers, the ship's called the Josh Edward Braun. Named after Josh Braun. He was a little older than me. So anyway, I think he was a little older than me. Yeah, I think he was. A little bit. A couple of months. I think it's the same age as Tim. Then he's a little younger than me. Now that I think about it, because he's a little younger than me. He inspired story and rumor afterward, none of which the rumors were not true at all. He was outgrowing and gregarious, and for Pine Hill that was unusual. He was one of the campus Casanovas, as we called it. Even though technically he wasn't, it was just that he was more gregarious than we were, more outgoing. That's all it was. It's sort of like how a previous person given that title, Dave McLean from back in the day, was also called that. But when he went to regular high school, he wasn't that anymore at all. He was just like everybody else. And he commented on that months later when he visited, and then in that story. His claim to fame is going on later. His family bought the cabin that we had in the up north near the Sierra Nevadas. His family happened to buy the cabin, and it's a coincidence that we used to have. And he's still there. He still owns the cabin to this day. So my sister and her husband encountered him, and they went up there to visit the cabin and see the cabin they hadn't seen in 30 years. And they talked to this gregarious, chatty guy there that owned it, and the McLean and the McKellen family. And I said, "Oh yeah, what was his name? Was his name David by chance?" And he said, "Yes. He's thinking he was about your age. I said, "Well, it's Dave McLean from Pine Hill." I think it's still around. Well, yep. Yeah, that's a trip. Anyway, so yeah, that's for Josh Braun. He got named ships after him and stuff, and then the Stronghold that appears later, and other ones. There's a John Patrick Curran in the story. They changed his name to Patrick Curran. He's also from Pine Hill era. No relation to the Curran Theater, we don't think. It's just a famous name. There's a bunch. There's Alicia Nguyen, who was probably based on an Evergreen person. We're not sure. There's Henderson, who's Jamie Messi. There's even to the point that he gets a first wife and he gets a divorce in the series. That's just like Jamie Messi did. No, so it's Jamie Messi. Actually, he was not directly around anymore, but he did know that Jamie Messi was going to be a character in Starship Locations, and liked the idea. So there you go. Well, that's fine. I don't care. I'm not that guy anymore anyway. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know, years. Most of those guys in their years. There's an odd character named Joaquin too. I attempt to include a Muslim in the story, but he doesn't do anything that indicates that he's other than his name. Yeah. The stories were written before 1999, up to 1999, so they're earlier. I was incredibly prolific in the 90s. I was cranking out 500-page seasons in a year. Yeah, why wasn't this guy being hired? Come on. I always said to aspiring writers and cast members in the 2000s, you gotta come up with a story. You gotta come up with a story, a yarn. It doesn't matter if it's a little derivative. Just make sure it's not too much. Rip it off, and learn how to type. The word processing classes has several of those. Learn how to type. Learn how to type well, so that it's easy to come up with your ideas and have them flow out of your head immediately. Marcus Cards also learned how to type, but took him longer. So yeah, at times, so Microsoft Word's programming, if you go just a little bit over 90 words a minute, it throws off the word. It can't keep up with you. It's like, and it's like, it's like, you're like, oh, come on. Damn. But typing up the grandmother's novel. Yeah, yet an hour ago, there was yet another phony publisher. I left a phone message saying, "Oh, your book, I think it's Grandma's book. I listened to her again. A phony publisher. I wonder why our Author House, like years ago, that was the name of the original publisher, gets off just giving like information out to random phony publishing houses." Years later, 10 years later or more, and thinks that somehow they're going to rook me again. No, you can't fool them twice. That's not going to happen. That's another thing in the biz. If you're going to do vanity press and self-publishing, find a vanity press self-publisher that will pay you. If they ever ask for money to promote the thing, no, they're going to pay you. The other way around. No, this is always, somebody at the church, Ken Reed, also publishes books. He's published books with actual, like, author places, though, actual, like, publishers. He's not self-published. He's published. And people call him, too. So, but it's very niche, Mennonite stuff. Very niche, so it's not, it's not like sci-fi where there's a bunch of people like sci-fi, so it's cool. Yeah, so clearly I understand the craft at this point. And now the resume is the channel, basically. You don't have resumes anymore. What are those? They just say, if you ever wanted to write a story or come up with story ideas and stuff, it just says, put him to the On Location Calicat channel and say, okay, this is what I've done. This is what I'm capable of doing. Some scripts and things, and I can totally crank that out. I prefer a writing room. I prefer creative control over whatever I've written, which is probably going to not endear me to any of the studios. Because they were like, wait a minute, creative control over it. You want to be the showrunner, like that Kamelt guy. Yeah, I'm the showrunner. If I wrote it, it's my fan film. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be in charge of it. No one's going to change it. Somebody can give me ideas, but they can't change it. But yes, season 3 is after Clark, really, so you don't need to do Prospectors if you don't want to. You can print it up and waste the last of the ink if you want to, and then sure, fine. But you really don't need to do another 500-page thing. It's going to sit there. It can sit there another month. It doesn't need to. It's not like it has to be done. I don't think it has to be done. It doesn't have to be done. Yeah, and I'm not sure the 3rd series really worked anyway. And probably neither is Mark's Cars. He's like, oh, we're a prospector. Clark and crew is kind of done when Raxler meets Clark. Raxler and Clark meet for the last time on the planet, 2399, and then it was jiggered to 2499. Re-edited to, yeah. It's like, yeah, that's it. They don't need to go from there. Anything they do after that, with that cast and crew, is like kind of redundant. They don't need to do that. You can, but they don't need to do that. Yeah. They tried to reintroduce that cast and crew. Prospectors was fun though, because it was an attempt to recapture that 90s flair in the mid 2000s by doing a story where I had set up the value of the story being like, okay, you had 18 pages, not double spaced, single spaced, and 18 pages, and you're going to tell roughly 26 episodes in there, 18 pages. Well, it turned out to be like 12 or 13. So we kind of set up what they do now on TV. They have they don't do a 26 episode story arc. They do a 12 or 13 episode story arc. And that's what they do. Even if that, maybe 10, 11 episodes. And then they stop. And that's the end of that season. That season is over. So even the new Star Trek is not as long as any of the other ones were. You have to line them up. No, Academy's not going to be as long either. They really need to redo that so it's not set in the time of Burnham. It makes no sense. Nobody's going to care. It's too far off. It's weird. Anyway, but in this one, yeah, there's stuff that can't be filmed in Prospectors. There are episodes that would have to be left out just because we can't physically do them. There's one in which they go to the planet of the ferret people. We can't film that. It would be how would we do that? There's other yeah, we can't. I mean, we could paint up action figures to look like them. It would just be action figures. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it would work. After Clark and crew, yeah, kind of goes along with Steve Clark, the teacher, who was kind of loosely based on going out there and disappearing and then reappearing by 2005 on MySpace and then Future on Facebook later on in 2009 or so. But anyway, so we have 2007, 2008. There haven't been much storybook stories after that series. We've done some attempts to bring stuff back, but really there was a lot of other stuff going on in the past 20 years, and just didn't really get around to doing anything like that new. Well, for 10 years of it, we're over on Trek Core. You got to check that out. But 10 years of that. But yeah, they were doing they were rewriting the stories and polishing them and putting them up online by 2019. So in 2019, they were all up there. There's 40 stories, Brown and Yeager stories, mostly Brown. Yeager's like 30% of them, but we put his name on the credits. He's a consultant. He didn't actually physically write them. And the whole premise, the whole idea of there's like genome aliens and that they make their own aliens and there was they discover the lithium like sperm jars on the planet and they discover all that other stuff and the sphere ship and who built those, and not the spear builders from Enterprise. Although it is interesting, it's another Star Trek thing. Oh, gee, you're talking about the sphere builders from Enterprise. Nope, it's the other way around. Once again, Star Trek just took an idea from us, used it. Red Angel, later on in Discovery. Spear builders, earlier. Starcrackers. They were keenly aware of that Starcrackers early movie before it had come out. They must have seen the VHS version. It was 40 minutes long and thought, yeah, that's cool, as sphere builders, yeah. Yeah, that's what they were thinking. They must have seen the earlier. There was a VHS version. Oh, they seen it. They watched it. Like, yeah. And later on, Discovery watched the YouTube video version. The Red Angel, that needs to show up. It's like, yeah, that's a planet. You got that wrong. It's a sphere. The Red Angel is the sphere thing. The sphere builder thing. It's not Burnham and her mother. It's a building at San Jose State. It's the art building. It's still painted that color. It's at San Jose State. It's the art building. Yeah, it's a sculpture thing on the side of the building. On the edge of it. Yeah. At that last convention, I went by it and took a picture in front of it. Yeah. There it is. That Red Angel. Except now the Eagle Angel is a brown angel. They painted it slightly. But it's still the Red Angel on the other side. So yeah, season 2 of Starcrackers. Or, they kept calling it Starcrackers. Space Vanguard Space, to avoid copyright. Vanguard Space. Yeah, Red Letter Media's Space Cop would have fit in that universe really easily. Had they been around back then, it would have been like, oh, you want a cameo? Appear in our story. But it was okay because later on we adapted some of their ideas. So, in the Starship locations, there was some of the characters would show up as an homage. They were okay with it. But yeah, the other thing is that in the early days of the terminology of writing and script writing and short stories, premises, Mark's Cards would read one of my elaborate premises and say, that's enough for a whole novel. It was a premise, a short story, basically. A premise. That's just the premise. You could put that into a whole novel, but there'd be an awful lot of fluff with just a premise. So, no, it's more like, this is going to be an 18-page episode, not it's an episode of the story, not the whole thing. Yeah. There's a lot of that premise. What's a novel? There's a lot going on. It's like, because he would tend to over-elaborate the setup in something. One time he was attempting to do a Jurassic Park spoof. I won't say the context, but it was a Jurassic Park spoof. And he got about 50 pages into it before he realized, I'm just typing up Jurassic Park. Just doing Jurassic Park, just describing it. Not making fun of it, just describing it. Great. And the crossover stuff appeal also has an interesting flair in that it isn't just Star Trek that came up with their ideas. The movie Dark City literally came out a year and a half after he wrote a short story called Dark City. Mako Dark City story. Which became a Starcrackers episode. It's in there. It's in season 2. So it's in there. A lot of the Mako stuff was redone as a Thompson story. He's kind of like Thompson. So it's more like Thompson than Henderson. He's not really Clark. He's not really Schmidt either. Mako is kind of wacky, so hyperactive. But potentially hostile. So he's Jim Tickon, basically. So he was the one he's supposed to play. So there's a lot of fun stuff. He did not write Dark City, the movie. It's just they stole the title, part of the premise. Saw it and was like, this is like your story. It's weird. Strange. I didn't do it. And scripts nowadays are actually written very poorly. Movies these days are written very poorly. So at this point, my stuff looks like genius compared to that, and it's just because it's not very good. People are reading movies like Argyle that are just like, oh my, who wrote this? Did AI write this? No, AI didn't write this. It's a really bad script writer. No, a lot of movies sucked because during the writer's strike, nobody could write. But most of the movies that have come out now are the movies that were still in production during the writer's strike. So about a year ago. So they were still in production. So they were already being done. So at this point, though, the newer one is after the strike, because it does take a long time to do a movie. But when you're in control of the whole kit and caboodle, then it doesn't take any time at all. But you probably want to do with all these is just hunt and pick and choose stories that are cool to do as part of the series, quote unquote, and don't bother doing 65 episodes of the one and roughly 25 episodes of the other. Just do the ones you like a lot, because otherwise it'll take forever. This premise is cool. Let's do that. Oh, that one's a cool one. Let's do that one. And don't worry so much about the generational stuff, because it's confusing anyway. Okay, Space Vanguards update. That's Prospectors, Season 3. Use the last of the ink to print up Prospectors Season 3. There it is. I'm going to put it in the pile. I didn't bother with title pages, but it's Prospector Season 3. I didn't need to bother with title pages, I don't think. Well, I could put title pages on it, but it's Vanguards, Prospectors. There it is, Season 3. Yeah. Yeah, Vanguards, Prospectors Season 3, and that's pretty much it. I've included Prospectors just because I might as well print it up. It's there. So that's all I got to say about that, pretty much. Anyway, so we'll see whether it's any good or not. I've just printed it up. I don't know. Okay, this is a quickie thing behind the scenes on Prospectors. I basically recompiled I took the episodes where I just took 100 pages at a time and broke them up into their component episodes, setting them up about 8 episodes of season. There are several small episodes in each batch. Those are batches, so that's why they're in order, but they're batches. So yeah, like first season. Unlike the Distant Destinies one that was so long, it had to be separated into what it is. But this is shorter, so 8 episodes basically. So you would shoot Starcrackers as 8. So the season 1 would be 8, and season 2 would be 8 basically. Season 3 would be 8. This is season 3. There isn't much to know about our quick update except that it's a John night. It's early in the. It's almost noon, I think. But yeah, on the upset, and I decided to. I had stapled all of the episodes, 100 pages each, and then stapled the names to them on the minutia of season 3, and discovered that I'll just redo the staples and put them back in by episode, because that's how you did the other 2 seasons. So I just made it look cleaner. That's all. In terms of paper to look through it. Yeah. It's cool to have printed up all of these 2 magnum opus stories, the Starcracker series and the other one. So and Canary Space, and that's cool because the originals were lost, but the digital versions were saved. So we printed up the digital versions. No, we could later on print up the digital versions on location as well, but we would not publish those as scripts. We could do that just to have hard copies. But I'm not doing that. I'm not going to go on and do that. I know I keep saying that on these tapes. I'm going to do this other thing and then not do it, and then I end up doing it. No, not in this case. These are the fantasy stories. These are workable as fantasy stories. The other stuff is not. Yeah. So you have, the Prospectors was a spin-off after the Millennium, and it was intended to be another crew, a more military crew, instead of Starcrackers, which was more space cops. Yeah, before Red Letter Media even existed, really in the 90s. They didn't exist yet. But yeah, their character Space Cop later on is definitely like that. Definitely. Season 2 was in Starcrackers was more about the storybooks and the novellas that were written on the premise that Mark's Cards would say about a short story outline that there's a novel, short story outline. Yes, there is, but you'd still have to write it. So, yeah, that's what he meant earlier about the other thing. Yes, yeah, in a premise, in a short story outline, there's a novel in there, but that's not the novel. That's just the short story outline. The first episode with them discovering the sphere thing is the beginning. Somebody has to go back and rewrite and write the series that goes with that story. That even here, double spaced for reshooting Sphere of Influence. Even that is only about 65 minutes. If you put the movie together it's a pilot. It's a 65-minute pilot. It's not long at all. So yeah, that was prolific. Oh my goodness, doing all these things in the 90s. And the flyer and all that. And that was before I knew how to type very well. Learning how to type very well. All this stuff in the 90s. Star Crackers is the one that got a little bit further ahead. Prospectors was set originally 20 years later, or 10 years later, but then it was reconstituted into the novels in 2019 as novel 3, and decided that no, it shouldn't be 10 years later. It should be 2 years later, just because we don't want to introduce their kids. That was literally Mark's Cards was really confused by and didn't like the idea of generational sci-fi with their kids in it, even though it worked in Canary Space, but it really doesn't work in Star Crackers. Besides, would Henderson actually do that? Probably not. I joked about that in the latter half of Starship Location's Legacy is about that. That's the joke. There's them and their kids, and their Marty. Something got to be done about their kids. It's a joke. That's a joke from. But yeah. Also, having seen Terry Farrell and Nicole DeBauer at that convention, there really needed to be a story about that convention, because it was and Brent Spiner and Michael Dorn and all those guys, and Robert Picardo. There were a bunch of people there, and the guy who played the Gorn, William Shatner, was there. We had to do yet again. William Shatner appeared with a number of Next Generation people, and Picard wasn't there. But Patrick Stewart didn't show up, just Shatner. Mainly talking about politics, which wasn't very interesting. And the Israel-Hamas war and stuff. That wasn't very interesting. I wanted to hear him talk about being William Shatner and movies and stuff. I wanted to hear him talk about Star Trek, just because that would have been cool. Robert Picardo talked about performing and doing on stage and Broadway and stuff. So. And it does sound like Picard, but it was Robert Picardo. It was the Doctor from the show. Yeah. There's Prospectors. There's nothing wrong with the Star Cracker series. It's just Space Vanguards, Vanguard Space, as it's called for reasons. This is fine. You do it. It's very similar to Starship Locations. We've kind of done some of the jokes in it already. We've done 2 of the episodes already as something else. So yeah. The episode that's called Stormblast Domici is basically the premise of one of the episodes too, as well. That's the other one. So I think Mark Cards will approve of doing the series as long as he doesn't have to show up and do any voiceover work. Does Calicat have as many voices as the guy from that was there at the convention? No, not quite as many as the Bender guy, but no. It was funny. There was Little Shop of Horrors references in the other one, not this one, and it's a tangent, I guess. But there was somebody commenting on the actress who played the character from Little Shop of Horrors, the girl at Little Shop of Horrors who sings, and somebody in the comments didn't get that the fake voice she's putting on in the movie isn't a real voice. She's talented with voice acting. That's how it's connected. And that when she sings, that's her actual voice. When she's singing, Suddenly Seymour, that's her actual voice. She's a Broadway actress. and get that the other voices is fake. Yeah, they seem more. Oh, Mr. Mushnick. Yeah, she's faking that. Yeah, that's a made-up voice. But yes, the so that's kind of related, and that's a voice. Back in the day, Peter Cullen. I mean, Peter Weller. Yeah, RoboCop. No, Peter Cullen. Yeah, Frank Welker. Don't give up yet. Yeah, you don't have a job yet. No. Yeah, there was an interview thing where he said that Peter Cullen said that Optimus Prime's voice, many of them don't do it right because they don't get the inflection. And Optimus Prime, for instance, well, how could they? I mean, he modeled it after his older brother from a Vietnam Marine, so they wouldn't know what that voice is. But also, John Wayne, a little bit of the Duke in there. Yeah. So, and yes, after much practice, the Calcatster, the Clint Cowpoke character, can do Optimus Prime, leader of the Autobots, quite well. Autobots, transform and roll out. Well, as for Star Trek, there, we have Jean-Luc Picard, Federation, Starship Enterprise, T.L. Ray Holt. I'm Data, an android. I am fully functional in a multitude of pleasuring, a variety of techniques. I am Worf, son of Moog, daughter of the Fifth House, as we joke. He's a daughter, yes. Son of Worf, son of Moog. Of course, I Zulus with oh my. And of course, my favorite of the series, just because he's so obnoxious, Captain James T. Kirk. And I actually got, one time, William Shatner to say, I don't do that. I got him to actually say that. And he did that. And he chuckled. William Shatner. I don't act like that. I don't speak clipped like that. Oh. Shit, I guess I do. But yes, fascinating. Captain. Anyway, so it's Mr. Spock. If you want to practice all the Kirk voices, you can do V'ger is a child, evolving, learning, instinctively, needing what? Spock! A child is about to wipe out every living thing on Earth. Now what do you suggest we do? Spank it? To which the silly Trek guy then says, yes, Captain. It only knows that it needs, Doctor. Yes, it knows that it needs, Doctor. Yes, there's no spanking going on in Star Trek. There apparently was curious little cross-dressing going on. But only because we didn't have any girls. And we still don't. So, yeah, all the female voices will be pitch-bent Cal-Cat voices. Jane Piedmont and MC Kim.